You live.
Good afternoon. This is Bill Cobbs on the live on the record. If you've read any of the things that I write, you'll notice that when I end a commentary, I always say, pay attention, think, and keep your eyes wide open. Today, I want to start off our conversation by sharing with you some thoughts. In 1968, June 4th, Martin Luther King was killed. And when Dr. King was killed, it really marked the beginning of a backward slide for us as a people. You know, we assumed that because we'd gotten the Voting Rights Act passed and because we'd got the Civil Rights Act passed, that the work was done. We didn't have to worry anymore, that things would continue to move forward and progress. But instead, we began to move backwards. I want to start out with a question because I'm curious to know how many people really know the answer to this question and understand the implications of it. And the question is, when was the last time that one of the statewide offices, meaning governor, secretary of state, attorney general, had someone Black sitting in that office? Now, I'm going to make this easy for you because we've never had a Black governor. We've never had a Black attorney general, but we have had a Black secretary of state. And from approximately 1971 until 1996, that Secretary of State was Dick Austin. Now, Dick was fortunate enough to be a beneficiary of the work that Dr. King had done. And in many respects, from a statewide office perspective, he was the last beneficiary. Because while we've had folks go to Congress and we've had folks sit in the legislature, we've never had the representation at a state level that would give us the opportunity to really make some things happen. And here's the thing that you got to know. Since 1996, we've never even had close to someone who looked like you or I sitting in one of the 3 top offices in the state that was elected by a statewide election. And you got to ask yourself why. And when you ask yourself that why question, then you got to come back to the three things I always talk about. Pay attention, thinking, and keeping your eyes wide open. See, we assumed that the work that Dr. King had done would continue to move us forward, while the folks who didn't want us to move forward began to see the opportunity for rolling things back. And from Reagan forward, they did a spectacular job of taking us back. One of the things that I want you to think about is that if you have no voice in who occupies the governor's seat, who occupies the Secretary of State seat, who occupies the Attorney General's seat, you have no voice. Those are the three voices that really determine what's going to happen in our state. And it's important to understand that because, you know, I was shocked and I wish I could say surprised, but I wasn't surprised when Flint last week had a boil water alert. After all of the issues that have come up with the Flint water system over the last, 8 years, for there to be a boil water alert when you have a Democratic governor sitting in the most important seat in the state, something is very, very wrong. Very, very wrong. This past Saturday, the Democratic convention was held down at the old Cobo Hall in Detroit. And during that convention, there was going to be a selection for the chairperson for the Michigan Democratic Party. Now, I want you to think about this. In Michigan, if I remember correctly, there are over 2 million registered Democrats. 2 million. However, there were only 2,000 votes for the leadership of the Michigan Democratic Party. 2,000 votes. And the candidate that I believed was capable of going in and doing that job and doing it right was Cynthia Johnson. And Cynthia, if memory serves me correctly, came in last place. So I got to ask you, what are we doing as a people to make sure that we have our rightful place in Michigan politics? Because, the Democrats can always count on us to line up and do their bidding for them, but we don't ever seem to get anything back from them. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I am bone weary in playing this game that the Democrats are going to be the salvation of my people, because they're not going to be the salvation of my people. The only thing that's going to save us is us being aware that we got to pay attention and hold people's feet to the fire, that we've got to think about what things mean, and that we have got to walk around with our eyes wide open and not assume that gender affinity is the same thing as skin affinity. You've got 3 white women occupying the highest offices in the state. And unless I'm missing something, they haven't done a damn thing to help Flint out, to help Benton Harbor out, to help any of the urban communities move forward. And now we're in their second term. So we got to come up with a strategy for making sure that come 2026, something is different, that we have someone in Lansing who is going to be representing us and not just expecting us to sign up for the status quo. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is that Debbie Stabenow has announced that she's going to retire and that her seat in the Senate is going to be open. And I only know one person who is throwing their hat in the ring for that seat. Just one. And that one person that I know about is Hill Harper, who moved to Detroit a few years ago and has made his home here and started building a business here. Now, here's the thing. I don't know whether Hill Harper is the right person to take that seat. I do know this, though. I know that he deserves a good, long look. I know that he deserves the opportunity to get in front of the people of Michigan and state his case. And I can appreciate the fact that he's the first out of the blocks to say, hey, I'm running for the seat. So if I lived in Flint or if I lived in any place in the state, I'd be making sure that I was reaching out to Hill Harper and saying, hey, we need to get you here so we can hear what your story is, we can hear what you're about, so you can know our people and have them have the ability to make an intelligent decision about who they want to take Debbie Stabenow's seat. Because, you know, while there's nobody else who said they're going to run yet, believe me, there are folks who are sitting in the wings who think that chair belongs to them. In fact, I'd almost put money on the fact that there is a person that sits in the House of Representatives who's got their eye on that seat. And you all know who I'm talking about. Alexa, you said that Harper made a bunch of promises about the settlement that weren't kept. What promises did Hill Harper make, and what was his ability to make those promises be kept? I really want you to tell me what those were. Now, going forward, I think we have to understand that from a political standpoint, we cannot wait until the last minute to get behind a candidate. I think Hill Harper is probably doing the smartest thing that I've seen happen. He's getting out there 2 years ahead of time so that people have an opportunity to take a good close look. And, you know, one of the things that I keep being amazed by is that the people in the 13th Congressional District in Detroit, you know, ignored all of reality and sent Sri Thanandar to Washington to represent them. So I want you to think about that for a second, because Sri Thanandar walked into Detroit a few years ago after running for governor and recognize that here was a vulnerable community that he could take advantage of and use it as a stepping stone to get to where he wanted to be. You said you really want to hear who has their eye on this seat. Well, my personal opinion is that your state legislator has his eye on that seat. I would be very, very surprised if he didn't decide that it was time for him to make a move and run for state senator. I think that all the cards are lining up that way. And I think that if somebody else doesn't emerge to be a viable candidate, that it would be very easy for him to walk into that seat and again be effective for the people that he wants to be effective for. And that's not necessarily people that look like you or me. I don't think, we are speaking of, we're speaking of Representative Kildee. That's my personal opinion, that Kildee is definitely got his eye on replacing Debbie Stabenow. What are your thoughts, Trevor? Do you not think that Mr. Kildee is thinking about that at this juncture of the game? You know, the thing that I think that we all have to think about is how we position young people to not only be interested in political things, but to be a part of the political scene. And I want you to think about Flint for a second and ask yourselves how engaged Flint's younger community is in the party mechanism in Flint, and who there is ready to be groomed to do something bigger than just be someone sitting on the sidelines. Well, Trevor Berry just said that, Trevor Berry Hill just said that he doesn't think that Kildee could make it as a replacement for Debbie Stabenow. And I'm curious why he would think that. You know, here's the thing that you got to realize. You know, we have a state that, for all practical purposes, is a red state. If you move away from Genesee County, from Oakland County, Macomb, Wayne, and Washtenaw, which are heavily Democratic, the other counties in the state are definitely leaning towards the GOP. Now, the thing that makes it easy for somebody like Kildee, more so than anyone else, is, I'm just going to say it, he's a white guy. And, you know, one of the experiences I had when I was running for governor is I actually had people tell me that, in their opinion, I was probably the best qualified, most knowledgeable candidate for governor, but that when it came to people on the western side of the state and to up north, they were never going to be willing to vote for somebody who looked like me. Now, I happen to disagree with that because one of the things that we did in putting together my campaign is factor in what a Democrat had to do to win a statewide office in Michigan. Now, as you recall, in the 2018 election, you had 3 women win the top 3 offices. All 3 of them were Democrats. The reason they won is because they did an excellent job of getting the support needed from those 5 democratically controlled counties. Now, the thing that we have to do is make sure that when we support somebody, it's somebody that's going to support us. And frankly, I will tell you that in 2018, we didn't do a good job because time and time again, I heard Governor Whitmer say that if she became the mayor of Flint, the governor of the state of Michigan, that she would make sure that Flint had everything it needed to overcome this water issue and to get back on track. Now, I don't know if you folks know something I don't know, but I didn't see that happen. In fact, not only did I see Flint's water issue get exacerbated, but I also saw another community like Flint with a predominantly African American population begin to suffer the same trials and tribulations, and that's Benton Harbor. Trevor says that on the federal level, in the House of Reps, we've heard him advocate so little on the Hill for this area. We get face service here when he runs, when he looks for donations, but he's just party line votes instead of voting loudly on what we need here and holding up votes until we get what we need. Well, what do you expect? We don't hold him accountable. We don't require that he do the job. You know, politicians go into politics for 1 or 2 reasons. So first reason is they go in because they have a real desire to serve the people that are their constituents. And the second one is because they're trying to improve their quality of life. Hear me again. The second one is because they are trying to improve the quality of life that they have. Now, think about this now. Think about Debbie Stabenow's salary as a U.S. Senator. It's over $170,000 a year. Now, the difference between sitting in the House of Representatives versus the Senate is what? You get 6 years in the Senate. You have to do it every 2 years in the House. No person in their right mind would pass up the chance to lock down their job for 6 years. That's why I believe that Kildee would be interested in running for Stabenow's seat, is because it gives them a little bit more job security and potentially the ability for greater exposure. And Karen, you're right. Your pipes still have not been completely fixed. And they haven't been fixed because there's no pressure being put on the people who can make it happen. Charlie, good afternoon to you too. we don't have accountability because we don't demand accountability. We allow people to get in office, and then we tell ourselves, well, if we make a mistake, we'll fix it next time around. And next time around, we do the very same thing because people don't vote. People do not get out and vote, as demonstrated by the mayoral election that just occurred in Flint. You had less than 30% of the registered voting population vote. That's a crying shame. That, when you think about the trials and tribulations that Martin Luther King and the folks that were pushing voting rights dealt with, and we, when all we have to do is pick up an absentee ballot, don't make sure that our voices are heard, we kind of deserve what we get. Because people talk about improving the plight of our community economically. If you have no political power, you have no financial power. The two go hand in hand. It's a circle. If you have no political power, you have no ability to economically influence what happens in your community to you and your people. So Karen Williams is right. You have to stop giving your vote away, and you have to make sure that you elect people who are going to represent your interest, who are going to represent you, and who are going to be about the business of taking care of you. I don't think people think about it, but I want you to stop and think about this for a second. How in the world does somebody who's making $170,000 a year go to Washington and end up being a millionaire after maybe 10 or 15 years in Washington? It's impossible to do if you're doing the people's business. But if you're about the business of figuring out how to line your pockets, how to get big donors to make sure they give you information that other people don't have, you can do it very easily. But we have got to pay attention. We gotta be looking at things with our eyes wide open, and if you don't pay attention, if you're not walking around with your eyes wide open, you're not going to do the thing that is basic to survival, and that is think. Think, people, think. There's no way in the world that a community should be suffering while the people that represent that community are doing well, because that lets you know that they aren't focused on what's important for you. They're not doing the people's business. I'm curious, how many of you know who Hill Harper is and that he was planning a run for the Senate? Give me some feedback on what you know about Hill Harper. And if I were pointing him in the direction of someone in Flint who could introduce him to the community, who would you recommend that I point him to at this stage in the game? Well, so let me tell you a little bit about Hill. He is in fact an actor. He graduated from one of the Ivy Leagues as a lawyer. He is deeply engaged in helping to identify opportunities within the community, which is one of the reasons why he moved here and decided to start a business. He is more than happy to come out and meet people and share with them his vision for what Michigan can be with the right kind of leadership and the right kind of representation in Washington. Now, it's important that you understand that I'm doing this show because I want to see something better happen for my people. I'm doing this show because I recognize that it's easy to sit back and talk about things. It takes work to really get something done. I am your voice. I'm willing to be the person who sticks their neck out on the line to get things done. I'm not afraid. I don't worry about anybody taking anything from me or trying to hurt me, because I'm at a stage in my life where I'm going to be okay no matter what. I don't have to worry about uh, somebody being able to reach out and hurt my family or me or anything else like that. Did you know? Did you know that there's some interesting things happening right now in Grand Rapids? Did you know that the police officer who was responsible for Patrick Leola's death has made a motion to have the charges dismissed? You're not seeing anything significant on the media about that because, frankly, they want to keep it quiet. They don't want you to know this man may very well get away with murder, because it was murder. It was no different than what those 5 men in Memphis did to that young man than what was done to Patrick. I know what I'd like to see happen with this show, but it's not about me, it's about you. So you need to tell me what you want to talk about every week, what you want to see me bring to the forefront, what you want to have me spend time on making people aware of, because I work for you. I work for you. This is an act of love for my community, and I want to make sure that I do the right thing by it. Somebody said that Eric Mays and Arthur Woodson have the info. Now, I'm assuming they mean the info on Hill Harbor. Well, Gloria, when you get off of the show today, Do me a favor. Get in your car and just drive around Flint and take a look at the vast amounts of land where only a handful of people are living, and ask yourself, what could it be if the people of Flint got together and decided that they were tired of waiting on the land bank, they were tired of waiting on the mayor's promises, they were tired on the Mott Foundation, claiming to be the great white savior, and decided to do something of their own. That land can be bought for a very, very reasonable price. I've said this a number of times. I'm going to say it again because you need to understand this, is that in the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to see an explosion in the population of the state of Michigan. And that means that there will be an opportunity to have new housing. Nobody is telling you to wait until somebody else builds that housing. We've started a community cooperative in Detroit that is designed so that we will be able to build 400 single family, 1,200 square feet homes and sell them at a reasonable price, reasonable meaning affordable, and have people rebuild their communities. The city is never going to rebuild your community. The state isn't going to rebuild your community. A developer isn't going to come in and rebuild your community. It's only going to happen if you make it happen. And it doesn't take a fortune to do that. Let's assume that you were going to build a cooperative and you made membership in the cooperative a dues paying affair. Let's say $10 a month. $10 a month was what they paid. And you got 25% of the people in Flint to join. In 3 years, you could raise enough money to build 40 single family homes from the ground up, sell them to members of the community at a reasonable price, and then take the money and build a Flint Citizens credit union. And why is that important? Think about this. Why is it important? Right now, if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, if you have credit cards, if you have any non-fixed rate debt, you've seen the servicing cost for that debt increase significantly. Now, if you're trying to survive and you're just trying to get by, every time those interest rates go up, it makes it much more challenging for you to service those loans. You could create your own community-based credit union that made capital available to credit union members at reasonable rates and still make money, and still make money, because I know that right now, if you've got a credit card, chances are you're paying at least 19% interest on that credit card, and probably higher. So if you made the mistake of running up significant debt on that credit card, you're probably making monthly payments every single month, and maybe you're only making the minimum payment. And when you read the fine print on your statement, it says something very alarming on there. It says that if you don't pay any more than what you're paying now, and you don't make any new charges, because that's important, you can't make any new charges, that you'll be paying on that credit card debt for the next 12 to 15 years. Yes, it is. A lending institution by us and for us is a major step towards building Black wealth and independence. Because see, one of the things that people don't understand is that the folks at Chase and at Wells Fargo and at the other traditional banks don't ever want to see you get out of debt. They want you to be in debt forever and a day, because they're counting your money. And until we do something differently, we're going to continue to take our money from our community and put it in someone else's pockets. I want to do a quick survey. If you own a house now and you're on a adjustable rate mortgage, how many people have seen their mortgage costs rise by more than $100 a month over the last 8 months? People aren't saying anything. That tells me that you're thinking, that your minds are racing, and that you're figuring out that you are getting royally hosed. Because I want you to think about this. The Fed has increased interest rates 8 times since the beginning of 2022. 8 times they've raised interest rates. Now, ask yourself, who benefits from increasing the interest rates? Who's benefiting from that? It's not you. It's not your next door neighbor. It's not somebody getting more aid. It is the banks. The banks are benefiting. If you go back to 2008, when we had the last financial crisis, the reason that financial crisis happened is because banks and other financial institutions made loans to people at low rates, and then they bumped them up and bumped them up and bumped them up and bumped them up and bumped them up until people couldn't pay anymore. And then people just walked away from those homes because they couldn't afford them. And we had the biggest housing crisis that we've had in this country since the Great Depression. Now, we can either learn from our mistakes or we can continue to make them. And Black Wall Street can happen again. It can absolutely happen. But we have got to recognize that for there to be a new Black Wall Street, we have got to begin the process of trusting one another. We have got to begin the process of recognizing that we can't move forward if we don't make an honest effort to move everyone forward with us. You know, nobody gets left behind. You know, I don't know about you, but I know that we're better off with 1,000 people being able to live and provide for their families than we are with one very, very, very wealthy person. You know, the people like Musk and Bezos who are hoarding money that they can never spend, while there are people trying to get by, just get by on, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 a year is wrong. Now, I don't know if you saw the proposal that one of the Republicans made about a new tax policy that was going to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. And what the proposal said is that rather than charging people an income tax, we just charge them 30% of everything that they bought. So that means that if you make $25,000 a year, you're probably spending $25,000 a year, which means under his proposal, you would end up paying about 1/3 of what you worked for in taxes. Whereas somebody who made $1 million a year and only spent $300,000 of that $1 million would only end up paying $90,000. So tell me how that's fair. Tell me how that represents an opportunity for you to dig yourself out of the hole. During segregation, we were our brother's keepers. And we do need to get back to that, except for the fact that we don't recognize anymore that we are one. We have allowed someone else to convince us that we don't necessarily share the same interests. We don't necessarily share the same plights. So we have become a society, a community, where every man is for himself. We don't recognize that we're stronger as a fist than we are as individual fingers. You can break an individual finger. It's hard to break a fist. You know, when you go to the beach, you walk along the beach, if you get a couple of grains of sand in your shoe, doesn't really bother you because it's only a couple of grains. But if you get a fistful of sand in your shoe, then you got to do something about it because it's narrative. And, you know, you want to get rid of that irritant as quickly as possible. We are a group of people living next door to each other, but we don't know each other. You know, we don't have block clubs anymore. We don't have get-togethers anymore. We don't know what issues our neighbors are dealing with because, frankly, we've decided it doesn't matter to us. And as long as it doesn't matter, as long as we have this idea that somebody is going to come along and do something for us, eventually, we're going to be stuck. I don't believe, and I know some people are going to get mad with me when I say this, but that's okay. I don't believe in reparations because one of the things that I know, being a man of a certain age, is that once somebody tells you no the first time, telling you no again and again and again doesn't mean anything to them because it gets easier every time you say it. Every time they tell you no, the easier it is for them. And here's the thing. We got to get smart. We got to recognize that in order for the U.S. government to be willing to pay reparations to Black folks, they got to be willing to raise an additional amount of money. Because to service a commitment to reparations would require roughly 12 to 15 trillion dollars. That's money that doesn't exist now. So where's it going to come from? So every day that we spend chasing the dream of reparations is a day wasted. It's a day that we could have been spending on economically developing our own community and making sure that we are prepared for the future, making sure that we don't let a rainy day catch us by surprise. So I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor. If you were tuned into the show today and what you heard made sense to you, drop us a line and let us know. Let us know what you'd like to talk about in the future. Let us know where we can be more effective in providing you the information so that it's readily available to you. Support 810 and help it to grow into a force, into a media force that all of our community embraces and takes advantage of. Because you today, because you're listening or watching this show, are the medium for change. You're what's going to help to make change happen. And for as long as I'm alive, for as long as I can, I'm going to be here standing in the front, trying to make something better happen. And 810 is where your real news is. And you, every single one of you, if you see something, you got to say something. I want to thank you for tuning in today. I recognize that you're not going to like everything I have to say, that you're not going to always agree with me, but I guarantee you that every time you listen, it will make you think. It will make you open your eyes just a little bit more to the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. And my father used to always say to me that when you find yourself in a hole and it's time to get out, the first thing you do is you stop digging. And recognize that there's another way. There is another way, and that other way is what you represent. I'm going to close now with a selection that represents the way I think. It's by an artist from the 70s and 60s and 80s, Gil Scott-Heron. And I think that he was a man before his time. He was a man that understood the meaning of truth. And that's what we're about. Truth. Have a great day. And I look forward to being with you again next Tuesday at the same time. This is Bill Cobbs on the record.